So today I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I wanted to talk about a book I wrote, and that is called Molly. And I love this book, so I wanted to share a little bit about it, why I wrote it, and hopefully maybe some of you will be interested in reading it because I'm really passionate about this book. So Molly is my most recently published book as of right now, and I wrote this one last year, but I didn't plan to. So I was in the middle of writing a different book. Obi, you are not supposed to be in this video. I wrote Molly last year, and it was one that I didn't intend to write last year. I was actually in the middle of writing a totally different book, and I was just really struggling with that book. I was stuck, I was feeling stumped, and that never happened to me before. I'd written 3 books before that, and I had never felt that way before. So I was like, okay, maybe I need to take a break. So I stopped and I took a break, but I still wanted to write something. I didn't like just taking a break and not doing anything because I enjoy writing so much. It's like my favorite hobby. So I was sitting there thinking what I was going to do, and I prayed about it, and I felt like I remembered this idea for a story I had about a girl named Molly. And I had the idea for this story way at the beginning of last year, and I was really excited about this, and I thought I want to write a story about this girl who was adopted, but she had a twin sister, but she didn't know she had a twin sister, and she's going back to find her mom and her twin sister and see what happened and all these things. I had all these ideas that were sort of rolling around in my brain for this story, and they sort of just fell into place really quickly, where I would go on walk. I walk my dog, and that's when I think about stories I want to write. And I would be walking, and it was like a deluge in my brain, just of constant ideas just for this book, and it just sort of materialized and came together really well. And I had all the knowledge and of how I wanted to tell the story, what I wanted to write, but I was worried because it's a story that's different from other books I've written, and it's one that I wasn't sure how I would really bring it to a market, when I published it, I wasn't sure how I was going to really tell people about it or what categories I would place it in, because it's really a contemporary drama in a way, but it's different from, it's hard to put it into standard tropes and ideas. I don't know if you're familiar with, you see on Book Talk or things like that, there are a lot of tropes people like to state and list for books, and that's what gets them interested. There were no tropes I could think of for this book that really fit, and I didn't want to bother with that. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just sort of put this idea in the back of my mind. If I don't really know how to sell it, maybe I should wait on writing it, which sounds terrible, I know, but when you write a book, you don't want it to be met with deafening silence, so it was just sort of something I was weighing, and I thought, well, I'll put this book in the back of my mind, and I'll come back to it when I have some time just to write something that I just want to write just for me for fun. And I figured eventually when I do write this book, I'll just keep it for me and probably for my friends and family that want to read it. Maybe I'll get some copies printed and sort of just as a gift, But I kept thinking about this story the whole year, and even as I was writing that other book, I kept thinking about it, having ideas for it. I jot down notes in my phone or write down notes in my notebook, and I was really passionate about it. And finally, when I got stumped on that other book I was writing, I prayed about it, and I was reminded of this story, and I thought, you know what, I felt like it was time to write it. And I didn't have plans to publish it. I didn't have plans to do anything with it. I just thought, I'm clearly stumped with this other story. I need a breather to work on something else that I'll just have fun doing and not have pressure on it. I decided to write Molly. And I am always somebody who, when I write books, I have very thorough outlines, beginning to end. I always know exactly where I'm going to start, exactly where I'm going to end, and then I write out everything in between as much as I can before I start writing a book. I like to have a roadmap. And that doesn't mean I stick to that roadmap the whole time I'm writing the book, because there are always inevitably changes and characters added and characters removed and things like that. But with Molly, I knew exactly where I was going to start. I knew exactly how I wanted the ending to go. The ending scene was one of the first things I knew I had in my head, like this is how it's going to end. But I didn't have a whole outline of the middle. And I sat down and I was going to write an outline and treat it like I do all my other books, where I sit down and I'm very uniform and very, plan everything out and have exactly how I'm going to do it. And as I was doing that, I just felt like again, I'm feeling that stumped feeling. I don't want to do this. And I prayed about it again, and I felt like I was just supposed to just write this book and enjoy it and have fun. And I realized I was putting all this pressure on myself with the other books I was writing, to this pressure that they needed to be something that people would want to read. They needed to be something that would appeal. They needed to check these boxes, all these different things. That's not to make it sound like when I wrote the other books I've published that I didn't write passionately or that I wrote just to check off boxes, because that's not true at all. I wrote stories that I really cared about and believed in, and my focus wasn't on not making it something that would go viral on TikTok, But there was still a pressure in the back of my mind when I was writing. And sitting down to write Molly and and ignoring that pressure and deciding I'm not going to worry about publishing it. I'm not going to worry about how I'm going to market it. I'm not going to worry about any of that. I'm just writing this book for me, and I'm not even going to worry about an outline, because if I'm just writing it for me, then if it's messy, that's okay. That's how I approached it. And when I did that, what happened was I wrote this book very quickly. It is my shortest book at like 200 and... how many pages is this? Yeah, it's at 230 pages, so it's my shortest book, but it was my fastest book because I had so much fun writing it, and I was so in love with the story and these characters and so passionate about it that it just sort of, it wasn't a chore to write, it was fun. And I always have fun writing books, but there are always days that are really difficult and just feel like crap when you're writing. Like you just feel like, oh my gosh, this is all garbage, I need to toss this. But I never felt that way with Molly. Molly was fun from start to finish because it was just a fun project that I wanted to write. By the time I finished, I was starting to think, maybe, I wonder if this is good enough to actually share. I wonder if this is something that I could publish, because I realized I cared so much about this story, and I felt like it was a story I wanted to share, even if it wasn't something necessarily that I knew how to market or, something that had trendy tropes. I wasn't going to do all that for this book, but I knew I still wanted to share it. So I had my husband read it. He's always the first to read my books. And he told me that he really liked it, and he thought it was good enough to publish. So I said, okay, well, I guess I'm going to move forward with editing and publishing and all those things then. And so that's how I ended up deciding to actually publish this story. And this story I'm so passionate about because the subject matter is something that's so real and something that so many people deal with and have experienced or go through. But I don't think most of us don't know anything about this. So like I said before, but I'll kind of give the premise again. This book is about a woman named Molly, and she's 22 years old. She's recently gotten engaged. She's about to get married, but she was adopted, and she's always known she was adopted. So Molly's fiance encourages her to do an ancestry test with him, just for fun and just to see. And through this ancestry test, she discovers she actually had a fraternal twin sister that was born at the same time as her, that based on what she could find online, didn't seem to have been given up for adoption. So obviously this is a huge blow to Molly, and hurts very much to know that her mother gave her up but kept her sister. And so Molly decides before she gets married, she wants to track down or attempt to track down her mother and her sister and try to reconnect with them and just see what happens, especially because if she's about to get married, if she happens to reconnect with them and gets along well, she wants to invite them to her wedding. But more, it's just a question of she wants to connect with them and figure this out and understand for herself, even if she doesn't quite know that at the beginning. And so that's sort of the beginning of this book, where it opens as Molly on her way to this town to find her family. I'm really passionate about this story. Obviously for me it was a very deeply emotional story to write, and I really enjoy that aspect of really thinking through emotions and trying to put myself in other people's shoes. But I was very concerned when writing this book. I'm not adopted, so I was very concerned about actually honoring the experiences of people who have been adopted, honoring the experiences of those who've given up kids for adoption, who've experienced these things, families who've gone through this. I wanted to honor that and make sure I was writing that as accurately as I could. And I'm not saying I am amazing at this or I did 100% great, but what I did was I actually tried to do as much research as I could. So first I was looking on forums online and just looking up people sharing their own experiences of being adopted, of meeting their biological families when they were adults, of having kids adopted into their family, giving up kids for adoption. I read countless forums of these stories, and reading these stories sort of helped me form a picture of a lot of the different emotions and the different circumstances and the different things people went through. These stories were all vastly different too. Some people had amazing experiences, some people had terrible experiences, but it was mind-boggling to see what so many people have been through, have went through, the things they faced, and the doubts and the struggles and things they faced with through their whole lives because of these stories. And it's things that most people never think about because we haven't had to. And it's not something anyone should have to think about or anyone should have to deal with. But so many people do, and nobody even knows. And so I was really struck and moved by these stories, and genuinely I wanted to write a book that would honor the stories of people like these, that would honor these sorts of people, that people who've been through these things would feel seen or be able to connect to Molly and to these characters and to what's going on. But on the flip side, there's Molly's mother too, who gave her up for adoption, who had plenty of other hurts and things in her life that led to her decisions. I was actually talking with a friend who met their biological parent as an adult. And I talked to this friend because I had questions and I wanted to know what that was like, what it was like to meet their parent when they're already an adult, and to be faced with that, and just the tensions and the awkward and the uncomfortableness and all that it means. And my friend was so candid, and I really appreciated this because they gave me so much good information and even really personal, probably painful information, but they shared it with me about what this meeting was like, and the questions it brought up in them, the things they struggled with growing up. And hearing their side of the story, one thing my friend said was that we are so quick to vilify people for doing what they think they have to just to survive. And it was specifically talking with this friend that made me realize there was more to the story I was missing in Molly. And it really hit home for me the importance of not only Molly's story, but sharing her mother's story and what she went through, why she made the choices she did. And so this book covers sort of both of those things, where Molly is the main character. You're getting the most focus on Molly, but you're also being fed in small bits. You're getting her mother's story. And my goal with this book, as I said before, I wanted to shine light on these stories and on people that we don't even think about usually. But also I wanted to try and remind people about the importance of empathy and sympathy and understanding that for others around us, they make decisions, and we're so quick to judge people based on one decision or one thing we see or something they did, but we don't see the multitude of things going on behind the scenes, the things they've had to struggle through, the pains they've been through. And that sounds so cliche, but I think if we really actually had a better understanding of that, things would be much different in our society and in our culture today. We're such a culture of blame and pointing the finger and canceling people and all these things that are so lacking empathy and understanding and grace for other people. We're so quick to point the finger and say, you did this, I will never talk to you again, how dare you? When I'm just as imperfect as the next person. We're all imperfect people figuring things out, making mistakes. And so, long story short, that's why I wrote this book. It's why I'm so passionate about this book. It's a very emotional story, but it's one that I put my heart and soul into, and it matters so much to me. It was a story that I wrote purely because I wanted to write it, and I was really passionate about it. There was never a thought about, this is a sort of story that'll be popular, or this story will be like this. And so I hope if that sounds interesting to you, you'll check out Molly. This story means so much to me, and it would mean a lot if you wanted to read it and check it out. There's no romance, so don't go in expecting that. It's a contemporary drama about finding family and healing and understanding yourself and your identity and all these things. And I hope that it's encouraging if you do pick it up and read it. And I hope that you will like it. And of course, I have other books too. I'll do videos about those as well. I love all of them, but none of them are quite as emotional as this one. I have 2 science fiction books, and I have 2 science fiction mysteries, and I have 2 contemporary books. I guess this is one of the 2. The other one is Dear Patience, Sincerely Lucy. Anyway, all I'd say, I'll talk about my other books some other time, but I hope you enjoyed the video. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Hey, it's Molly. Just wanted to let you know I'm going to drive down to the coast for a while. There's something I have to take care of. Talk to you soon.
This is a first-rate town, and all you ever notice are the ways it stretched too far. Well, it has been knocked down, but some of us are still left here between the scars. And when you look around, all you ever notice is you cannot see the